So hi everyone, very excited to talk today. So I'm going to be focusing on these advocacy strategies for policymakers, especially as a grad student. So I'm still a grad student and I've been involved in policy and advocacy with the Johns Hopkins Science Policy Groups. And thanks to Chanel, who is the founder of this group. And so I got interested because of the graduate student tax, which was a policy to tax graduate students based on the entirety of our, not just stipend, but stipend plus tuition. And that's kind of how I got introduced to advocacy. And then I kind of seek my different opportunities based on my interests. And so recently, I advocated for funding for cancer research with the American Association for Cancer Research. So with a group of other graduate students across the US that also do cancer research. And while this was an opportunity that I had to apply for, there are others that are very accessible. And so here on the right, there's the Rally for Medical Research, also kind of geared towards advocating for biomedical research and funding. And here there was, patients, advocacy groups, doctors, and this was just free for anyone. And so what I learned is that you probably already are engaged in advocacy, most likely in your institution. So if you're part of a science policy group, maybe you have been trying to advocate for policies that are going to change the graduate education policies, maybe mental health resources, or maybe, recently, if you've advocated for change regarding institutionalized racism in STEM, you've probably already been engaged in advocacy, even if it's in your, in your home institution. And that means that you probably already have some of the skills. So for advocacy, what I found to be great is to be patient and assertive. It's a long process, and throughout this process, you also want to build coalition and find allies, so find other groups that are going to support you on your cause. And you also want to educate and engage with the public, and so this kind of goes two ways. So you want to educate the public, but you also want to learn from the community on other issues. And all of these to just also be a trusted reference person. I said here for policymakers, but it can be for anyone who holds the power to do that change that you're advocating for. And so being that trusted person is going to help, in the future, if you're advocating for something else or they need an opinion, to just, you're going to be that person that they're going to be asking for. And so I'm going to go through, three main strategies that I found that work very well. And they all kind of go with science communication. So one is framing versus the message, and then the success model for advocacy, and then just finishing with some grad student perspective. And so I'm going to be giving examples of these. So basically framing is kind of like the values that everyone accepts and cannot be denied. And so these are, for example, freedom, respect, opportunity. And you want to be framing your message using some of these values, because then you're going to find basically shared values with the policymaker or the audience that you're talking to. And so this is going to start forming that relationship to be that trusted person. And framing is long-term, so even if your message changes, you can maintain the same framing. And so the message, which could be your ask, basically would remind the policymaker of these shared values. And so the message can be short-term, so your ask can be very specific in that moment of time. And it's more powerful, as I mentioned before, if it goes together with some public attention, maybe other coalitions that are supporting you. And so as examples, you can have for NIH and NSF funding. When I advocated, I mentioned how me as a grad student, I couldn't join a lab because that lab just did not have enough money. And so you can start to connect, that with your lack of freedom to make that kind of choice or opportunity, and how that just not only has an impact on you, but also on the research. And for example, for climate change, you can have, the message of, oh, the world should be 100% carbon free because, by 2050, because of our grandkids and kids in a livable future. And you're therefore kind of connecting with those values of responsibility and opportunity. And so now that you have your framing and you have kind of your message, which approach do you take? And so the success model for advocacy is kind of this rubric that you can use for different causes that you may be advocating. And so you want your message to be simple. So you want to distill your idea to the core. You want to find what it is exactly essential. And this could be short. It doesn't have to, but it definitely helps. You want it to be unexpected. So, if you meet with policymakers or maybe the staffer, they've been hearing stories and asked by a lot of groups and a lot of people. So you want to make sure that your story is impactful. You want to break away from that maybe monotonous day that they've been having. And that's going to also, if it's unexpected, it's going to be attention grabbing. You want to be concrete. So you want to stay away from, abstract ideas. This is going to be easier to remember for that policymaker. And it's also easier to find those gaps to make that policy intervention. You want to be credible, and I think this is hard for us graduate students, but I think we are also experts in the eyes of policymakers and staffers. We are the science person, and so if we're advocating for a cause that is directly, our, say, research interest, we are the experts. Maybe we are advocating for something that we are not, we're not working on this issue, but if you've experienced a certain issue firsthand or secondhand, that already gives you a credibility. And you want to use details, but not too many facts and stats. You want it to be emotional. This is going to help make that association between issues. And you want to be specific in terms of who is going to be impacted by this. And so sometimes if this is something that the constituents of the policymaker are going to be impacted, can evoke that kind of sense of duty of the policymaker to really care about an issue, because their constituents and the people that look like him, her, are going to be impacted. And lastly, you want stories. And so stories combine a lot of these other things. So they're unexpected, they're credible, they're emotional, but here the main goal is that you want to be inspiring, you want to be memorable, and you also have a story. And that's kind of where I want to end. I think as graduate students, our perspective, it's probably unique, it's new, and it's fresh. So I would encourage everyone to kind of look back at your past, kind of think about the reasons why you care about the specific issues that you're interested in. I think, and this was kind of a surprise for me, but policymakers really want to hear from you. I think when I participated in the Rally for Medical Research, I was in the same room with patients, other advocacy groups, doctors, and when there's a lot of people, only 2 or 3 people can talk. And it was very impactful to hear from the other advocacy groups and patients and doctors that they wanted a student to talk, and how they saw, graduate students as the people that are being trained and that they're going to affect their lives, in finding new treatments, new approaches to cures. And so, don't discredit your story, your feelings or struggles as a grad student, because when you're advocated, you're definitely going to be giving a mic to basically share your story. So I'm just going to end with this. And this is my contact info in case you want to connect later on.
I really liked the framing and message idea of like separating those out and intentionally thinking about it. And I really liked that the 2 S's in success were story at the end, because it really emphasizes how important stories are. But my question for you is, as a graduate student, how do you balance your time between advocacy and your schoolwork? And do you have any tips or tricks for that? And then along those lines too, how receptive was your, or is your PI to you doing this external work?
So the balancing definitely is hard. I think you don't want to, at least personally, I advocate for causes that I am interested in. I know I maybe have opportunities to advocate for other stuff, but some of these Hill days just happen once a year. So I think that's very doable, especially because it's usually just one day. My PI has been very good with me taking the time, and she's very supportive. But it's definitely, might be an exception, or not. Not everyone, not all students have that kind of privilege to have a PI that's very understanding of me taking time off.
That's why I was curious about it. That's one of the big things I hear from graduate students is, I really like doing this, but I'm not sure I can bring it up with my PI, and or I don't have enough time. So I think it's really important to think through how to balance those two. So great. Thank you so much.